In. All right. My name is Dr. Witzleben, and I'm going to introduce our speaker for Hilbert Reads 2020. This is Stephanie Land. So thank you so much again for joining us in these kinds of strange circumstances. Just briefly, Hilbert Reads was started in 2013 here at Hilbert as a way to bring authors and their stories to all of you students. Our stories have ranged from memoirs about reuniting children with their parents in Nepal, to stories about suicide and college sports, to stories about hoarding, all right? So there's just all kinds of things that we've learned, and I've always learned something from our authors. And so every year we invite students to kind of meet with people and ask some questions and get to know the people behind the books that we always read. So I'm really excited this year to present Stephanie, who is the author of the New York Times bestseller, Maid, Hard Work. Let me make sure I'm on the camera. That's just a good book, but that's okay. But Hard Work, Low Pay, and A Mother's Will to Survive. This was an account of her scraping by as a low-income single mother. So including this memoir on his summer 2019 reading list, former President Barack Obama called Maid, quote, a personal, unflinching look at America's class divide, a description of the tightrope many families walk just to get by, and a reminder of the dignity of all work. So at age 28, Land's dream of attending college and becoming a writer was deferred, and after facing domestic abuse and lacking any form of reliable safety net,
Ma'am, you're muted.
Megan, I think you got muted.
Okay, so I'm back. All right, I don't know where I left off here. But anyway, so at about age 28, Land's dream of attending college.
Muted. Sorry, Megan.
Muted again.
There we go.
I'll be quiet. Muted. Don't worry. I'll shut up soon. So anyway, so this process of living in a homeless shelter and trying to apply for subsidized housing and subsidized food, it can be pretty dehumanizing and it's really difficult. But she was able to find work cleaning houses for $9 an hour. So mired in this patronizing government process of applying for things and paltry wages, Land illustrates the trauma of grasping for stability from a difficult system. And it demonstrates how hard work alone doesn't always pay off. So the Boston Globe describes Land's book as nailing the sheer terror that comes with being poor and the exhausting vigilance of knowing that any misstep or twist of fate will push you deeper into the hole. So this is kind of a fun fact. Maid is currently in production as a series for Netflix by John Wells Productions. So you might know him from ER, The West Wing, and Shameless. And also Margot Robbie's Lucky Chap Entertainment is working on this. So Land's writing about economic and social justice and domestic abuse, chronic illness, and motherhood has been published in the New York Times, the Washington Post, Vox, The Guardian, Salon, among many others. And she's worked in the Economic Hardship Reporting Program and is a writing fellow at the Center for Community Change. We feel really honored that you're able to join us today, and you have Mia with you as well. And so it's such a privilege to be able to introduce you to our Hilbert community. So thank you so much for being here. I am going to kind of mute myself for a little while, but I want you to see that in the chat here, I just posted some instructions for everybody. Dr. Reese is going to begin our program tonight by asking some of the questions that you've written in GS 101 and get us going with those kinds of questions. But we really want you to feel engaged and interactive here. And so I invite you to chat with me. If you can use your chat function, you can send me your questions. And I'll read through them and I will call on you to ask those questions directly. If you'd rather not ask them directly, if you want me to, then just simply say that, just say, don't call on me, but here's a question. And then that's what I'll do. So it works. All right. So thank you. And I'm going to kind of hide here for a little while and I'll chime in when I have a little question for people. All right. But thanks again, and I will meet you in the Q&A. David, take it away.
All right. Thank you so much, Megan, for that nice introduction. And Stephanie, hi. Welcome to Hilbert College.
Hi. Thank you all for having me and for tuning in tonight.
Fantastic, and actually, thank you for coming back. This is your second virtual tour with us. About a month ago, you gave an interview with Jeff Papia, our Vice President for Mission Integration and Campus Ministry. All of our GS 101 students have had a chance to watch that video. And if we happen to refer to that, I just want to let everyone in the audience know that we're referring to an earlier discussion that Stephanie had with Jeff. So, before we get started with questions, Megan alluded to your Netflix series. I recently saw that Maid is now #3 on the New York Times bestseller list. Can we start with just how you're feeling with such a wonderful news? And are there updates on the television series that you can share with us?
I can't share too much.
Okay, legal reasons.
Yeah. They just announced who's playing the role of my dad, but I forget his name. Do you remember? Billy something. But every once in a while they'll announce a cast member, but I'm kind of finding things out along with everybody else. So I can't talk about things much beyond that. So,
Okay, well, I guess we'll have to stay tuned. Is it 2021 when that will be aired? Is that the
I assume so, but I don't know. They haven't set a release date yet.
Okay, all right. Well, everybody stay tuned. The first question I wanted to ask you is a question that kept coming up time and time again during classroom discussion. It's centered on your relationship with Mia. When Jeff and you had the chance to speak, Jeff referred to your book as a love story, and you, the two of you had the chance to kind of think about that a little bit more deeply. And it's clear that Mia is the most important relationship in the series of relationships that you document in the book. But many of our students just want to know more, and especially more about your relationship with Mia and how Mia is doing today. And specifically, they ask questions like, how did Mia help sustain you at key points in your life that you document? And how is she doing today? Where are her curiosities and interests taking her? What dreams does she have for the future? How are things going?
Well, I'll start. During the time that we were really struggling, I think Mia not only kept me grounded, she also kept me active. We lived in very small places that couldn't afford, a nice TV or any TV or really any entertainment. And so I was kind of forced to be really creative in making sure that we were getting out of the house. Otherwise, she, I think, would literally jump all over the entire apartment. But I mean, it also, there was a sense of purpose at every single moment. And I guess helps me not fall into despair as much. I think if it had just been me and I was living in that circumstance, it would have been easy to, I think depression would have crept in a lot easier, and just feeling incredibly sad, or, hopeless situations or hopeless feelings would have come out more. Whereas, I don't know, when you're a parent of a very small child and are almost solely responsible for them, it's a big job, and kept me busy. But it was also there were a lot of rewarding moments too, and it's nice to have those kind of instant gratification, rewarding moments. Like if I ever got a tip from one of my clients, usually I got her like a Happy Meal or some kind of treat, and that always made me feel a little bit better about our situation, just that I could provide something for her that made her happy. Things now are pretty different. we definitely can afford the TV and several devices, and so I have found myself kind of missing the simplicity um, of how things were before, where we were forced to entertain ourselves without things that would entertain us.
Right.
Of course, like, I have been home with 3 children for 7 months now, and so devices are definitely nice to get a break every once in a while. But I don't know. Someone asked me if there was anything I missed about those days, and it made me realize that I am pretty nostalgic for simpler times when you kind of just had each other to depend on to entertain each other.
Right,
So,
and walking on the beach and through the parks, and as you described in your book, those really special moments together, right?
yeah. I mean, I guess we can't go out much because of the pandemic, but yeah, I miss those times. Mia, did you want to talk about your life?
Sure. Um, I guess now mostly I've taken up a lot of interests now that we're home all the time. Like I've taken up baking a lot, and I do a lot of baking. Like today, I just baked an apple pie.
All
Um,
right.
and um, I try and do things a lot that don't include devices. I really enjoy reading, and I do a lot of art, but I do often go to devices just because being home all the time is hard. I don't get many times to go out, and I'm doing school online. So, but I do try and find things that are off of my devices, and I have my sisters to hang out with too, which is really nice.
How is school going in an online format? We're doing something like that here as well. How is it going for you?
Um, it's interesting. It's getting to be quite organized, but and I've established a routine with it, but it's still really new and sometimes a little bit confusing. Like um, a lot of Montana had a internet outage, so we had to cancel classes for that day, which was really confusing. And um, a lot of the times my teachers have struggles, and school's definitely more complex now, but at the same time it's more simple. I don't know if that makes sense, but
Yeah. Well, I feel the same way as an instructor, complex and simple at the same time. Thank you so much for taking the time to jump in and say hi. I think we've got a lot of good questions already off the bat. And so maybe I'll just stop and let Megan jump back in. And thank you again, Mia, for saying hello to us.
It's very clear that your story has really touched a nerve with our students. And a lot of people are already writing in that they can identify with this struggle. And so they really appreciate, and I think they feel seen, by your story. So thank you for that. One student, I don't always know if everybody wants me to call on them. So I'm just going to mention, I'll ask kind of quickly. Morgan, did you want to unmute yourself and ask your question, Morgan Rush?
Yes.
Okay.
First of all, Stephanie, it's an honor to even be in the same Zoom call as you. And your story definitely was very raw and thoughtful, and I really connected it to my own life. So my question was, as a kid who grew up, my father was on food stamps and my mom worked full time, and she was trying to get her nursing degree. So there was a lot of financial hardship. So I was wondering if, thankfully I'm in a better financial place now, but if that financial anxiety ever kind of heals itself, because it's a bit traumatizing.
Yeah. I'm in a much better situation financially, obviously. Like I just got a royalty check that was totally unexpected, and it was like a pretty substantial amount. And it, for the longest time, I really struggled with PTSD, like when the book first came out and then everything was going so great. And I had money, you know, like I could go out to eat and order food that was like fancy. And but it just nothing ever felt real. And there was a very large part of me that I thought I was going to screw it up somehow by saying the wrong thing or accidentally tweeting something horrible, or, you know, so I thought that might happen. Or it just felt like nothing was permanent and nothing was real, because for so long, the floor had dropped out from underneath me. And I was still in this place of like, okay, it's really good now, but it's not going to last. Like, what's going to happen? Something is going to happen. And I was just absolutely convinced of that. For the first time in my life, for the first time in my adult life, I have housing security. I bought a house this summer, kind of convinced a bank to give me a loan when I didn't know if any of my speaking gigs were going to happen in the fall. And so we have a house. I no longer have a landlord, and that, just that security, it has been so huge, just because I will always have a place that we live, and nobody can kick us out or you know, say like what happened to us over the summer. Like our landlord suddenly was, we're going to sell the house and we don't want to sell it to you, basically. So that part of it has been extremely calming as far as my stress level. But everything else, there's quite an ease to being able to buy in bulk, and like I was just organizing a like pantry area in our garage, and we have like all this extra paper towels and soup and just like flour, and just, it's crazy to me sometimes. And I have moments of just kind of marveling, but I don't know what it would take for me to really feel financially secure. There are times that I am like, I don't have to worry about money as much, or sometimes at all, but I try to remember very often that goes away very quickly, or could possibly, or something could happen, so that I'm not going too crazy with buying stuff, or just, you know, I will always continue to hustle, and I will always continue to work and look for work and scramble together as many jobs as I can, because I don't, my job is kind of dependent on people being interested in me, so I guess I have to stay interesting.
Thank you so much.
We have lots of questions, so I'm just going to take over for a few
I'm
minutes.
gonna let Mia.
Yeah.
Right.
There's actually one question for Mia, if she doesn't mind, but I'll ask you instead. And that was from Colby Maddox. I don't know if you wanted to ask whether this was just about, you know, reading the book. Colby, did you want to ask it? This is really for you, Stephanie. So of course Mia can go, but I just wanted to know. Colby, do you want to ask that?
Sure. I was wondering, due to the language contained inside the book, I was wondering if Mia had been allowed to read it.
Because it can be sensitive, like a lot of the stuff can be kind of sensitive, so I wondered.
Yeah, I gave her a copy of the book once it was published, and she just finished reading it like this week. So it took a little while, but she kind of had to take breaks from it, very, very long breaks, especially after some traumatic things that happened, like the car accident and the surgery that she got in her ears was another. So, but I think she liked it. She did say it brought up a lot of memories that she would have otherwise forgotten. But as far as the actual language, like vulgarity, I wouldn't say that I'm perfect in that, but I do let some words fly every once in a while when I'm driving. So I don't know if that was as much of an issue.
Yeah.
Or that wasn't my biggest concern. I wrote the book knowing that Mia was going to read it someday, and I didn't want to do any damage with the relationship that she has with her dad. And I didn't want to traumatize her any further. And I also didn't want to write anything that I thought that she might be embarrassed by. So I was very mindful in how I wrote my story of parenting her. And I tried very much to not write her story because that isn't my story to tell. So those are a lot of the things that I kept in mind as I was writing the book.
Yeah. Thank you. Some other students who didn't want to speak up necessarily, but I'll mention his name is Timothy. He asked me to ask the question for him. Were there ever times when you really just got so down that you just kind of wanted to just kind of throw in the towel somehow, but that something kind of lifted you up, something intervened, or kind of whether it was personal motivation or somebody just kind of stepped in or something changed that kind of helped you to kind of keep going?
Yeah, I used to have a term that I used. It was the crushing sense of hopelessness that I felt the weight of. I was exhausted, like in every way. There were weeks that I would take so much ibuprofen that it gave me heartburn just to get through the job and do the physical work. And there were definitely times that I had reached a point where I did not know how I was going to go on. Either our car broke down on the side of the road, I was hungry a lot, and it was a real struggle. I think a lot of it was for me. There was no choice but to go on. I was Mia's main person, and you know, I felt a great sense of responsibility with that, and so that helped me a lot of just like not having a choice in the matter. I absolutely had to do it, and going to school helped me a lot. Just it kept me moving forward. Government assistance programs don't really allow you to improve your life. They very much keep you earning this like just bare minimum amount. If you go like $50 or $100 over, then you could lose hundreds of dollars in benefits. You could lose your child care grant, which, you know, if I didn't have that, I could not work at all. I could lose my food stamp benefits. So going to school, I think, was just one way that I could improve my situation without having any financial consequence as far as the safety net programs are concerned. But I also, I mean, I had a lot of privilege. I mean, I grew up in my sense of normalcy was, you know, like the low end of middle class. I mean, we weren't wealthy by any means. We could afford the occasional vacation, but that was my normal, was living in the suburbs and believing that I would one day go to college and get a real job and be a contributing member to society was what I always wanted to be. And so I I had a lot of privilege in that, in just knowing that that was not my end. And and some could call that inspiring, and that I had a lot of faith in myself, but I really think it comes down to privilege.
Thank you. David, we have lots of other questions, but I don't know if you want me to go to those, or if you want me to, or if you want to ask one of the ones that you and Stephanie have talked
about that too. I mean, I have one question on resilience and grit, and it might tie in nicely with what you just said, and then we'll go back to you if that's.
Yeah. I'm kind of enjoying like you've really, you've really inspired people and talked to a lot of people here. So thank you.
Okay. So we know, we've read your story. We read how you persevered through so many difficult moments. And for some of our students, they began to connect your story with some work that we had done on the concept of resilience and grit. We had done a little bit of research on that early in the semester. And what we learned is that these character traits can be learned themselves, and that people are more likely to achieve their goals when they're given a chance to cultivate their passions and find meaning and purpose in the things that they do every day, and to approach the world with a sense of optimism and hopefulness. So resilience and grit seem to be really important for predictors for personal growth and success. And so I know that you just briefly touched on that, but I just wondered what those terms mean to you, what those concepts mean to you, and how they motivated you as you were during your 6 years as a domestic worker, and how they continue to propel you forward. I mean, you've got new plans, and you've got new projects, and you're writing all the time. Where are your passions taking you?
Well, I'll start with the resilience part. People used to describe, when Mia was really, really little, like when we were going from the homeless shelter to transitional housing, I was really concerned about her and how she was going to grow up, going through all these transitional places, because at that point she would go to a friend, a single mom in town. We switched off mornings and afternoons so that we could work, because you can't get the childcare grant until you have a job, and you have to establish yourself as an employee before, it was a mess. So Mia would go to the friend's house, and then I would pick her up and take her to daycare sometimes. And then her dad would pick her up for the evening. And her life was like that for a really long time, like until I graduated college when she was almost 7. And then I was really worried about her. And I started listening to a lot of John Gottman's. I don't know if you know him, but he wrote a book called The Emotionally Intelligent Child, and it talked about how important the role of the father is, and just I'm just sitting here like, oh God, what am I doing? And I started talking to people about it, and they said, oh, children are so resilient, they can get through anything. And I tried to keep that in mind, but there was always this thought in my head of like, yeah, she doesn't have to be. It shouldn't be like this. I mean, we were forced into this situation where we were told to be resilient, and we were told to have all of this grit, and we were told to get through anything possible. I can't even count how many times my car broke down on the side of the road, and I had to gather up all of my stuff and my kid and like call a tow company, get into a car with like a weird person with my child and no car seat, and like try and get that all figured out, and still make it to work the next day somehow. And people would call that being resilient and having a lot of grit, but I call that not having enough money. I mean, that's, I was not getting paid enough. I was not getting paid enough to make ends meet. I was not supported. I did not have any benefits at all. I could not call in sick. almost lost my job because I called in sick a couple of times. There was no like taking a week off to go on vacation, you know, that was paid. I didn't have health insurance. Mia thankfully did through Medicaid. But I lived off of peanut butter jelly sandwiches, you know, and there's an aspect to that. At the time, I felt like a complete failure, and I was cleaning houses. Some people were my age, and they had law degrees, and I felt like it was my fault that this had happened to me. Because society tells you that, especially when you're a single mom, like, well, why didn't you choose a better guy? You know, or why didn't you make it work with him? There was a lot of blame placed on me, even directly through the court systems. And then you had this other side of like, well, you're just gonna have to, you know, work with the hand that you were dealt and make the best of it. But as I was writing the book, it was just like, man, that was a really hard time. Like, like that's not normal for people to experience that. But my worldly view was so focused on just getting through the day and making the numbers add up. I did math in my head all the time, just to make sure that I could pay rent and the electric bill. And so while I think that having a lot of resilience and grit is a good quality to make it through these tough situations, I also think that people need to be supported financially, first of all. I mean, we can't be expecting people to live that way,
Right.
and yet we are. And I can't tell you how many people told me, like, oh, I never have to worry about you. You have it so together. And I'm just like, well, I would like it if you worried about me, please. Like, this is really hard.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, as a society, especially as social media networks have grown the way that they have, we are forced to put that best face forward, and we are forced to always appear resilient and that we're making it through. And there is so much shame wrapped up in struggling, and so I only hope that people start talking about the troubles that they're going through, especially mental health issues. I have just now started talking about having anxiety and being really open about that. Whereas before I was completely ashamed. I thought it was my fault that I had these issues that I was going through mentally. And so I obviously have a lot to think about, a lot to say on that. But I mean, for the most part, I think, you know, resilience is a learned thing probably, but it's not necessarily something that we have to learn. You know, it's not like work ethic to me. Like, you know, you learn work ethic, and that's a good thing. Like you learn how to do a good job and finish the job, but resilience shouldn't be a part of our work ethic, or it shouldn't be what gets us to the end of the month. Our jobs should do that, you know. and they're, for most Americans, the jobs are not supporting the people who are working at them.
Right. Thank you. I'll turn it back over to Megan. I'm sure
Okay.
got a lot.
Yeah, I'm like chomping at the bit, like lots of people are saying.
Questions.
So one of our students, Tamaja, said that she was really interested in kind of empathizing with kids whose parents are single parents and kind of struggling. And she said that she wonders what advice do you have for kids who see their parents struggling and are trying to focus on the day-to-day but want to help more, and they don't know what to do with as kids, or even like young adults. Like, what do you do when you see your parents struggling and you're trying to do your own thing, but you just want to help? What would you say to them?
Wow, I can't imagine. And that must be really hard. I'm working on a book right now that is on the intersection of class and higher education, and talks a lot about, I'm reading a lot about first generation students who often dropped out of school because they have to go back home and help out with their families and financially, or take care of a sick relative, or just help out. I think for well, I can talk about my view. For me, I was always very honest with Mia about what was going on. I mean, age appropriately, and I wouldn't hide things all the time. I mean, of course, like if I had to go into the bathroom and cry, like I would definitely do that. But I mean, when you're living in such tight quarters, I mean, I think she kind of knew what was going on. And I think everybody just needs to know that they're loved unconditionally, and that I mean, of course, keep boundaries with people, you know, but at the same time, you know, I love you and I'm here for you. And if you need anything, just please let me know and I'll try to help. But I think for that relationship, remember that you are also the kid, you know, and it's as much as you want to help. I still sometimes think that, you know, a parent shouldn't expect a child to be there for them emotionally, and to support them emotionally. That should be your choice to do, if you feel that you can, and financially too. But I mean, just remember to take care of yourself as well. And stay on the path that you're going. I guess that, yeah, without having any experience of that.
No,
Then, I guess that would be what I would say.
yeah. And kind of related to that, another student asked if this has affected your relationship. Like, has going through this strengthened your relationship as mother and daughter? Do you think? This was Yasmin's question.
I would like to say that it has, but I mean, Mia has always been a very strong-willed, willful. Like as soon as she learned how to run, she was gone, and you know, never looked back. But I think because we were kind of orbiting around each other for so long, that we know each other very well, and we do have a good relationship. I mean, she's getting into like 12, 13 years old, and so there's a lot of stuff that I'm kept out of. But I have also always tried to make sure that she has other people orbiting her that aren't me, so that she has that outlet. I always, when she was younger, I always made sure that she had like 2 or 3 other adults in her life that would hang out with her, just because I knew there was no way that I could be everything for her, but there was also no way that I could support everything that she needed. And so, but I don't know, I feel like we're doing pretty good. She did say the other day that she really misses being able to travel places with me, because it was, since the book came out, I've gotten to take her along. Like we went to New York City and saw Phantom of the Opera, and we just went down to LA to meet, well, it was in February, but to meet everybody that was involved with the series. And so she did say that she misses that, and just having one-on-one time. And it's kind of hard to do that when everybody's at home.
Right. Yeah, that's some challenging. There's a couple students that had kind of slightly lighter questions in a way that might be kind of fun to talk about. Sarah Pog, did you want to ask your question about kind of, I think it was, you were asking about different situations or obstacles. Do you want to chime in, unmute yourself?
Yeah, for sure. I was wondering if you have any tattoos that represent different situations and obstacles regarding the novel.
Oh, the book. Yeah, actually this one, I don't know if you can see it. It's kind of faded.
Sailboat?
So it's from Where the Wild Things Are. And Mia loved that book, and I thought that she was exactly like the main character. And so I had this tattoo done pretty soon after we moved to Missoula. And it has the words that, "Oh, please don't go, I'll eat you up, I love you so." And you can't see it, but like it's kind of her face, and it says Mia on there instead of Max. And that was like from the first time that she wrote her name. And I chose that because I had to say goodbye to her every other weekend. She went on a ferry to go with her dad. So there was that one. And gosh, I have so many. I have one that says "Write hard and clear about what hurts," which was always, I wrote that line at the beginning of all of my journals when I was a kid. And I don't know if Ernest Hemingway actually said that, but I have it, like it's in his handwriting. So I hope he did. Someone said he did, and I just kind of ran with it. And I can't think of any others right off the bat. But yeah, I'm definitely feeling it right now that I can't go get a tattoo.
Yeah. And there's another question about, I'm going to ask it, Kaylee wants me to ask it for her. But she really wanted to know if you still had the ring that you got yourself as like a commitment to yourself.
Yeah, I don't wear it anymore, but it's in a little box in the bedroom. That ring is funny because a lot of people focus on that. Like, I can't believe she bought herself a diamond ring, and I think it was like $150. And I wore it like basically until I got married recently because it only fits on this finger and they rub together funny. So, but yeah, I still have it. I love that ring.
Good. All right. And I guess this is our last question. So I'm gonna ask a bigger one, I guess. Try to combine a few at once. People are really interested in how the story itself may have affected your relationships, like relationships with your parents or friends who were kind of nasty earlier on, and if that changed anything, or those kinds of relationships. And then people keep coming back to Mia and wondering if she is kind of the reason, the main reason you kind of kept pressing on there. So it's really a relationship question, and people they're just interested in learning more about how the writing process and how the story itself kind of affected those.
In writing the book, I was, I don't know, my publisher, of course, like told me that it's going to be the best book ever. And, they kept saying, you're going to be as big as Cheryl Strayed. And that was terrifying to me. And I tried to not think about that at all. But you do. And so I felt a great sense of responsibility with like every character that I brought into the book, that a lot of people were going to read about them. So I tried to make them very unrecognizable. But of course, like my parents and my family are who they are. But I haven't spoken to my brother. He was the last one. I haven't spoken to him in 2 years. And my mom, it's coming up on 7 years. My dad, in 9 or 10 years, I think. So I haven't had any contact or communication with them since the book came out. A friend in Port Townsend told me they asked my brother what he thought about the book, and he rolled his eyes really big and didn't say anything. So I guess that's the response that I get for that. I kind of wonder what my mom thinks, especially her husband, what they thought about a few scenes in the book. But I've never asked. I don't know. I just don't want to go back to that relationship of expecting something or wanting something that I wouldn't get in return. And the clients, I did, there was one lady who came to a book event in the Seattle area, and she was so excited, and she said, I love the book. I give it to everybody. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking like, oh my God, you must not have recognized yourself. I mean, because she wasn't written about very nicely. And I thought about that for a long time. And I guess the things that she said to me that affected me so heavily and deeply, like, I don't even think she knew that it did. I don't think many people knew that I was on food stamps or that I was struggling as much as I was. And so when they talked about those people around me, it was really eye-opening, and I think kind of kept me from having friends or, having a social life. And there is one friend, I think I call her Melissa in the book, who told me, you're welcome, when I was in the homeless shelter. We have had many conversations about that. She actually hosted a book club event for the book at the library that she works at. And she told them all, like, I am in this book, guess which one is me? And so she's good humored about it, I guess. And she said, yeah, I was in a bad place and was being really judgmental. And so we had a conversation. But that's the only person I've had a conversation with directly who was in the book. I mean, besides Mia. And I think Mia goes back and forth with how good she feels about being in the book. Like, she was excited to talk to all of you tonight, and she likes hearing about what's going on with the series, and she likes I don't know, when I first started writing, she would ask me if her paper or if her picture was in the paper for pieces that I wrote, or did you use my picture? Did you put a picture of me for your article? And then she would ask me how many likes it got on, like, and so she liked the fame, I think, for a little while, but now it's kind of a bit more subdued, or maybe she just takes it in stride better. She does eventually want to meet all of the children who are playing her for the series, and we're still hoping we get to go visit them. They're filming in Victoria, Canada, so we're hoping we get to go visit them on set at some point. But I don't know. I haven't spoken to Mia very directly about the book. There have been a few times that we have. I was on the road a lot. I was traveling a lot normally, just being a public speaker. And I think it was about a year ago this time, I got a call from her. Like, I was done with my events and I was about to have my burger and a beer, and I get a call from her in this bar, and she's crying and crying and crying, and said, I just read the accident scene. And I had to kind of talk her through that. And she said, I didn't realize how close I was to getting hurt. And we talked a lot about that. And there have been other times that she said things like, I'm sorry that I made it so hard for you. And so we have to have that whole conversation, just like, it was not you. Like, but there have been other times that, she said, like, thank you for working so hard. And so that's always a nice thing to hear from your kid. But I think for the most part, I am more of a, I don't know, meat and potatoes type of parent. Like I'm always available. I'm always here. I show up when I say that I'm going to, because that's 80 or 90% of parenting is just showing up. And so I I have tried to always be her main person, her main support person, um, just because her dad was in and out of her life and so much. And even though they have a good relationship, it's still kind of a not a very solid one. So, but I was very adamant about being on time and showing up when I said I was going to, and always letting her know what was going to happen in the day. And so it's been hard because I think she struggles with anxiety as well, and the pandemic has been really difficult with that. Of what's going to happen, what's going on with school. Do you even know what my classes are going to be like? And so it's, I don't know, every day it feels like is a new day with being a parent. But she does pretty good, and she tolerates her little sister as much as she can.
So the questions are still rolling in. So I know we're just about out of time. Do you have time for one more?
Oh yeah, it's okay.
Kind of comment. There's so many questions. People are really interested in hearing all about it. So I'm going to kind of combine one from Andrew and another from Aaliyah. So Andrew asks, so I'm just going to kind of combine it. His is really about kind of following your dreams and being an author and a college graduate. And then Aaliyah is asking about how to give back to the kinds of charities and scholarship organizations that made that possible. So I wondered if you could kind of speak to, like, what are some things that we can do, like, to support these organizations that, give scholarships to women who have suffered domestic violence so that you can pursue your dreams. So what are some things, as we close, I'm kind of thinking of how to move forward,
Yeah. Well, I always tell people, if you want to help someone or an organization, just call them up and ask them what they specifically need.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they'll say things like tampons, and you got to be okay with just giving them tampons.
Right.
I mean,
not always a scholarship, huh? Sometimes it's the stuff you need in order to go to school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, a lot of organizations, they rely heavily on volunteers, and if you have the ability to volunteer some time, do some kind of clerical work, or just like the busy work. Like I volunteered at a domestic violence office in Mount Vernon, and I made pamphlets and printed things out, and those types of things can be huge and allow them to focus on getting the funding that they need, and making the calls that they need to make to funders, or just like making a really fancy pamphlet that they can send to people to get donations. I think there are a lot of ways that you can help without writing a check for $100. But also I think the biggest way that you can help really is just educating yourself as much as possible on and just pay attention to what's going on with the media and what's happening with legislation, and how people living in poverty are living a life that is impossible. And a lot of that is because of the people who are making the laws, and the people who take away funding for food stamp programs and Medicaid and require them to work 20 hours a week in order to get those things. And so I hate to plug the election again, but like we're getting ready to vote, or some of you might have had the opportunity to vote already. And the people that you vote into office in your state are sometimes even more important, because those are the ones who actually see the laws go through. And as far as encouraging people to pursue their dreams, I don't know. I had two things happen to me in college. One was a professor who was a single mom. She was actually the head of the creative writing department, and she had 2 kids on her own when she was going through the MFA program. And I was having a really hard time with signing up to get an English degree, because I felt like that was way too indulgent to get an art degree as a single mom.
Next.
Like I needed to go on and have like a real job, like a desk job or
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to unmute you. Okay, you're gonna unmute yourself.
but
Yeah.
I had to have a job, to me, that was going to be very dependable, 9 to 5. And so to get an art degree, the head of the creative writing department was she talked about writing, and she talked about being a writer, similar to, she was a floor polisher, and that's her day job. Was she resanded floors for a long time, and she talked about writing in the same way, of that type of work, of just getting through to the end, and I kind of respected that, like knowing that it was actually work. And then another professor of mine, he said something really profound. We were in his office, and I was kind of talking about the same thing, like who am I to get a degree in English? Like I should be getting like some kind of technical degree or something. And he said, well, the country's so messed up, you might as well do what you want. that was really good advice at the time. So I think, there's no problem with encouraging someone to pursue their dreams. I mean, I was told a lot what to do. A lot of people told me to open my own house cleaning business, and that was what I should do. And I was so good at it and so organized, like, why don't you just open your own business and do that for the, rest of your life, or for however long. And I never did. I wanted to be a writer. I've wanted to be a writer since I was 10. So I had a lot of stubbornness involved with that. So.
And there's about 4 questions from some different students. Ashley, Alexis, they want to know about your fish. So Alexis, gonna have a funny closure. So Alexis Kelson, do you want to ask?
So I see you got 2 fish tanks. What
know.
are your fish names?
It's ridiculous.
iPhone, stop.
I think they wanted to know what the fish's names were.
Oh, well, we lost. So there's those are like the fancy, they're always bloated. But I asked for a fish tank for my birthday last year. And so each of the girls picked out a fish, and that was all great until my older daughter no longer wanted to take care of her really, really big white goldfish. And so we put all the fish together, and then the white one started attacking all of the other fish. So
Oh, no.
I now have 2 very large fish tanks. And they're fun to watch. Their names, they're the Golden Girls. There's, I mean, of course, there's Blanche, Rose, and Dorothy's in that one. We just lost Sophia.
Oh no.
Yeah, and in that tank is Mango, is the big white one, and then there's another one in there called Benedict Cumberbatch, because he has a little mustache.
That's amazing. All right, I think that's it. So All right.
Well,
Thank you so much. I'll let David kind of close.
yeah, thank you, Stephanie, so much for taking the time to come back a second time and to meet with us as a collective group. Hilbert is very committed to social justice issues, and one of the things that we really care about is raising awareness for issues that sometimes get swept under the rug or are not talked about, or people are a little nervous about talking about. They don't know how to do it correctly with sensitivity. And I think you just gave us a wonderful lesson in how to communicate some very difficult topics. And so I just wanted to say thank you very much on behalf of everybody here at Hilbert for joining us. And I guess I think we're going to have to follow you at Stepville on Twitter and Instagram, if I'm right about that, to learn about your next steps and to hear about your new book. I think many of our students might find that new volume very, very interesting. So again, thank you. And for those of us that are trying to strive to transform the world that we live into a world that's committed to social justice issues and is able to create a system that works for everybody. Thank you very much for all of your help.
Thank you.